What's up, everyone? This is 49ers Coast to Coast. I'm Grant Cohn on the West Coast, Jason Aponte on the East Coast. I was in San Diego earlier this week. Now I'm back up in the Bay. I don't go too far. I don't stray too far from the West Coast unless I absolutely have to, although I hear that you're coming out in the West Coast soon, which will be nice. I can finally meet you. Vish's going to be out here too. It's going to be a whole West Coast convention, which is nice.
Yep. I can't wait, and it's a good thing that you and I are so close because you helped me avoid disaster with my flight plans as well, too. So, me and Grant back to work, but we still look like we're on vacation. So let's go.
That's right. And next week, we'll probably be doing the show when he's out here. So that means it'll be 49ers Coast.
Yep.
That's
One
the
coast.
Show. One
Single
coast. Single coast. So today what we're going to do, I like the format from last week where we went back and forth and named the top storylines heading into camp. This week, let's do a similar format, but instead of storylines, people who are facing a make or break training camp. The 10 people who have the most at stake in late July. A lot of people don't have much at stake. George Kittle doesn't have much at stake, but a lot of people do. Let's talk about the people who do, and we'll go back and forth. Again, I get the home field advantage, so you go first.
Okay, so I'm going to steal the biggest one. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo isn't really fighting for anything more than his status in this league as a starting quarterback. And that's valuable. And we've said that plenty of times because, no matter what you think, it's clear Trey Lance is here to be the starter. They didn't bring him here to beef up the quarterback room. This is a guy who has to really put it all out on the line in camp, play really well in the preseason, and play as well as he can in the regular season so he can be a commodity next year or be a commodity at the trade deadline, however the 49ers want to look at it. So he is playing for his starting quarterback title in this league. And that's valuable. That is something that is worth something. There's been guys who, are high-end backups who continue to have long careers, but being known as a starter, maybe even somebody who's a bridge guy at 30, like Andy Dalton still sticks around. Andy Dalton continues to get jobs. He needs to start thinking of himself in that way. Is there a world that he pushes his way into top 12 status? Sure. Realm of possibilities, it's in there. It's not something I'm banking on, but, a starting quarterback is valuable. Bridgewater has still found jobs and he's still around. So it's got to be important that he not only plays well, but just makes it through with no injuries and shows that he's capable of being a starter in this league for one of the top 32 teams because, the way that the quarterback position is in this league, things happen fast. Carson Wentz goes from an MVP candidate to being just sent off, and now he has to try to revitalize his career in Indianapolis. I'm not trying to compare him in terms of skills. I'm just trying to compare how quarterback position is viewed and how, I guess the word is, not boom or bust, but it's a seesaw, right? For a little while, while you're known as a starting quarterback, that can go away very fast, and things can change about how you're perceived and your value around the league. So number one has to be Jimmy Garoppolo. This is it right here. This is it. You're going to make your stand either to continue to stay here and maybe even force the 49ers into a weird decision in year two, whether to keep you and maybe not start Trey. But more importantly, just make sure that you put out enough on tape and put enough on the field that you can be considered a starting quarterback, one of the top 32 in the league, and still continue to have that for years down the line.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Jimmy Garoppolo, when he's healthy, is a B quarterback. Not elite, but B. But the problem is he's not healthy. He can't protect himself. He's not on the field enough. So there's so many questions about where his mindset is. It's like, do you want to play football? Why didn't you come back at the end of last season? Would you be okay being a long-term backup? Are you going to be the kind of guy who loses his starting job and fades away? Like, to me, I kind of look at him as Sam Bradford-y. Like, Sam Bradford made a lot of money, was a starting quarterback, got hurt a bunch of times. And then when he was time for him to be a backup, or it wasn't really clear that he was a starting caliber quarterback anymore, he just left. And I think I could see that happening with Jimmy Garoppolo, or I could see him having this triumphant comeback. He's such an enigma. He has a lot to prove the next couple of months.
Absolutely. And again, we don't know what's going to happen. Remember, Washington, they have Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heinicke over there. From the way that I'm projecting them, I don't suspect that they're going to be high up to get a quarterback. And who knows if even this quarterback class is going to be as loaded as I thought this quarterback class was, or as that everybody else would. So Washington's the team. Pittsburgh, that's been brought to my attention plenty of times on Twitter. Ben Roethlisberger is almost done. They're not going to turn it over to Dwayne Haskins. So it's all dependent on how the season plays out. If Ben Roethlisberger leaves, which we all think he is, then there's a spot in Pittsburgh for him. Washington, it's obviously Chicago's out right now because of Justin Fields. But yeah, I mean, it's really, really important for him to not only play well, but just stay healthy and show people that he's still worthy of that starting caliber label in this league.
E. Kim says if Jimmy gets a serious injury during training camp or the regular season, his 2021 and 2022 money will be guaranteed. Yeah. All the more reason to trade him as soon as possible.
No, I didn't know that. That's a scary proposition.
Okay, my turn. Oh, wait. I didn't do the ticker. Wait. Now I did. Okay, that makes all the difference. I'm going to stick at quarterback, Josh Rosen.
Okay.
I mean, his career's at stake. He's only 24 years old. If he bombs in training camp and the reports of him are bad, he doesn't complete many passes, he doesn't get many reps, and the Niners cut him, there's a legit chance that no one signs him, even to be on the practice squad. He needs to show, like Jimmy Garoppolo needs to show he's still starting caliber and that he still has the passion to play in the NFL because he's a B quarterback when he's healthy. Rosen needs to show that he has any life in his career because so far he got to the league, was a first-round pick, which was really an honor in retrospect, embarrassed himself on draft day saying that thing about other teams making mistakes ahead of him. He's on his fourth team, and he's about 2 months away from spending the rest of his life playing tennis in a country club, being like, I was in the NFL, I got screwed. That's where he's that close to that. Or he could be in a position where he plays great in camp. He does really well in training camp, in preseason, and his career starts now.
I mean, at 24 years old, that's a very real possibility. And people forget that he is that young. And again, he has the excuse of, man, Arizona gave up on me too quickly. Miami, I was thrown into a terrible situation. Tampa, he went over there, was a practice squad quarterback, got a ring. Then now he joins the 49ers. It's true. Again, Josh Rosen has a lot to play for because, like you said, if he balls out in training camp, let's say he balls out in preseason, how many people wouldn't be saying, hey, let's send a 4th round, 5th round pick for him and see what we can do with him? Coaches always have that bravado, right? Let me get my hands on him. Let me fix him. I think we can do something with him. So it is imperative that he shows something because you're right. His career as anything, at least Jimmy Garoppolo, let's just say it doesn't go his way this year. He's still going to be on somebody's roster as a backup if that's how he gets viewed. I believe that if Josh Rosen doesn't show anything, I don't think people are going to want him as a backup. I don't think they're going to want him on their practice squad at all. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he competes. And it's a good point because he could become a trade chip. I mean, I understand that those 5th round, 6th round picks aren't valuable, but he still could be a trade chip if somebody else gets brave and they think that they could do something with him. So it's all up to him. At 24 years old, he's got a really good opportunity in front of him, and he's still very, very young. And then that's a really good point. I agree with you.
I kind of see him in a similar position as Jameis Winston with the Saints. I mean, they're both kind of statues with amazing arm talent who haven't had much success in the NFL. I don't know what Sean Payton's plan is for Jameis Winston. It seems like he's all in with Taysom Hill, but he also has this other side project in Jameis Winston, and Winston could end up being their starter, or he could end up being a trade chip because, again, it's like if you, from Sean Payton's perspective, from Kyle Shanahan's perspective, all you got to do is get a little bit of some good tape out with a quarterback, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a trade chip. Look what he did he didn't get to trade Teddy Bridgewater because he was a free agent, but still, Teddy Bridgewater's stock went through the roof in a month because he played well with Sean Payton. And I think
he didn't lose the same thing.
Exactly. The same thing could happen with Josh Rosen. If he played well for a month on a good offense with a good quarterback, with a good coach, you could trade him for maybe more than a 5th round pick. So all of it, yeah, this guy has a lot at stake. He could be out of the league entirely in 2 months, or he could be resurrecting it right now.
Situation matters, and that's exactly a really good point, because you watched Teddy Bridgewater win 5 games and you couldn't even figure out how it happened in a row for the Saints, and then he went over to Carolina, and then you start to see the cracks when you're not in as a good a system. I mean, even though I really enjoy a Carolina system with what they've got going on over there, but yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, Sean Payton was able to dial up what they needed to and just have him game manage, and again, that got him a starting job. Again, right now he's in camp competing for a job in Denver, Teddy Bridgewater. He's in, like, him and Drew Lock are going to be going back and forth unless they find a way to trade for Aaron Rodgers, which I don't think is going to happen. It's going to be one of those two guys. Both of those guys have the similar things going on, and Drew Lock is kind of like Josh Rosen as well too. Like, you don't show something this year, not many people are going to be, you know, remembering you for anything than being able to put on at an elite level by a young Jeezy, which I thought it was really entertaining.
Really, really good. Absolutely. Yes. And again, Josh Rosen is on his 4th team because he couldn't elevate the play of terrible teams. On the Niners, he's not going to be asked to do that. He's going to be everything is going to elevate him, from the weapons to the coaching to everything. And if he still stinks, then he's out of the league. But if he doesn't, then teams are going to look at him and say, well, if Kyle could do something, maybe we have the same type of structure to help him as well. So Rosen has a lot. Rod says guys wouldn't trade in Jimmy G for Cam Newton benefit both organizations. Then Belichick can bridge for Mac Jones, and Newton's style is closer to trade. What do you think?
No, my position, I feel like we get asked this question every week. I'm with it. I'm all, but the comments, I'm not even going to look. I don't have the comments on, so I don't see them, but I guarantee you everybody's in there like, no way, no. But look, man, Cam Newton's going to be cheaper. Cam Newton still can score in this offense because of the run option. He scored, 11, 12 touchdowns on the ground. Yeah, he can still be valuable. He can still teach Trey Lance some stuff. And like I said, last year, a lot of the stuff was overblown with lack of weapons, with his shoulder injury, with, you know, his accuracy issues coming back to the forefront, but they still won 7 games. They still won 7 games with Cam Newton. And it's not a bad thing, but just don't see the Patriots doing that, just because Cam cost them nothing. Cam cost them nothing to have him there for $3 million. So,
and he's got a chip on his shoulder. I think they like him. He wants to know when you in Cali.
The 29th, Fish. I'm flying out early on the 29th, 7 a.m.
Okay. Devin to Sherman says, quick question. If Jimmy is in their future, why not have him take a pay cut? Doesn't make sense. Why not do that? So they can
Can't make players. Can't make them. Yeah. Can't make them. And if I had a job, right, any job, you know, and they said to me, we want you to do the same amount of work, but we want you to do it for less, I'm going to tell my boss, no, thank you.
No.
If you get a promotion, you get a raise, fine. Or if they're going to tell you we're going to take some stuff off your plate, like if they tell Jimmy we're going to make you a backup quarterback, and, you know, maybe, but I doubt it. Why would you give away guaranteed money? I would not, especially in this league, especially with the uncertainties of what's going on with him.
Only way you can make a player take a pay cut is if you go up to him and be like, look, you can either take a pay cut or we'll cut you. Right. If the Niners go up to Jimmy Garoppolo, if they did that to Jimmy G, he'd say, great, cut me.
Cut me. Mm-hmm.
Great.
I think so too.
I'd love to leave. Yep.
Yeah.
So the other way to get him to lower the cap number is to extend his contract, give him a signing bonus, and, you know, push some of that money back. They don't want to do that either because they're trying to get away from Jimmy Garoppolo, not commit themselves to him. So that's where they're at. Yeah. Good question.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, let's move on. 3, your turn.
Richie James.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, they did I steal one of yours? I'm sorry.
No, I got 8. I got more than enough.
Okay. So, I want to make sure I say his name right. Nasimba Webster?
It's Simba. Simba Webster.
Simba. It's Simba. Yeah. Simba Webster. Cool. Like Lion King. Perfect.
Yes.
You drafted Ambry Thomas, who does kick returns. You bring in a return specialist. What does that say about what they think about the return game for Richie James?
Yeah.
And he seems to be their specialist when it comes to that. Now, the way that I'm kind of figuring it out, I don't think that Richie James is going to push for that number 3 spot as much as people think. I don't think that that's something that Kyle's ready to hand over to him. So you're not the number 3 wide receiver. You're not going to be the return specialist. What are we doing? Why are you here? And I think that Kyle's given him as many opportunities as he can to show. I mean, I know he has that one kickoff return. It wasn't a punt return, right? It was a kickoff return against Seattle, I believe, in 2018. 18. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was it. That's it. That's really it. And he's got to show something. He either has to separate himself from the wide receiver 3 group to stay on this roster, or he has to start returning kicks at a larger clip, getting them into good field position. Here's the game that I want to point to. In 2019, the Superdome game, right? The 49ers win that game in a shootout. Do people remember the effect that I believe his name is Deontay Harris from the Saints had? It seemed like every time he was kicked the ball, whether it was on a kickoff or a punt return, he was pushing them to the 40 on their side of the ball at least, or over the 50-yard line.
That guy's good.
You know how valuable that is to have your starting position not be – the 49ers start every single drive at the 25.
Yes.
Pretty much. That's it.
Yeah.
But now you're talking about having a better starting position. I think that that's valuable, and I think that the 49ers are showing you and telling you what they believe about it. Why bring in all these guys who can punt return? You still have River Craycraft who can punt return. He did it last year as well.
Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, I mean, they're just bringing in as many guys as possible. So what does that tell you about Richie James? He either has to elevate himself past the wide receiver 3 group, that log jam right there, or he has to turn into this guy who can be a game changer when the ball is in his hand on punt and kick returns.
I think the key point there is that Richie James Jr.'s spot on this 2021 roster is not guaranteed. Not at all. And remember, he was hurt in OTAs. He was hurt. So if he gets a pulled hamstring, I mean, he should make the team. He's a better player than Simba Webster. Nothing against Simba Webster. Webster hasn't returned to really any. I mean, he's been returning punts and kicks, but he doesn't have any long ones. So Richie James, I still think is better than Simba Webster. But I think what the Niners are saying is, look, Richie, if you mess around, if you miss time, don't think that we're just going to put you on the team. You need to get your ass on the field and practice and compete and earn your spot on this team, because if you miss training camp, like you missed OTAs and Simba Webster looks good, see it.
Nothing wrong with a low competition. Nothing wrong with kicking the tires on as many people as possible. Travis Benjamin's still there.
No doubt.
And that's another person
so
too.
Now you got 3 guys kind of doing the same thing. So Richie, if you haven't gotten the picture yet, your spot is not.
They're kicking the tires on everybody, and he needs to separate himself and do something this because I see it, right? You know, we all point to the 200-yard game against the Packers. A lot of that happened in garbage time and things like that, and that's fine, but he has to show something. You have to be valuable in some way. Like, they have to be able to bring you in as some sort of weapon, because he is good with the ball in his hands. It's just not necessarily on punt and kick returns.
Yeah. I do think that he would be really good on a more vertical passing team, like Tampa or Kansas
Bucs,
City.
I was going to say, the Bucs,
either one. I mean, he'd be pretty good.
The Raiders.
Yeah. So, all right. Brandon says, think we might be overvaluing this number 3 receiver group. Don't we assume Debo and Ayuk will miss 2+ games? So depth is important in wide receiver. Yeah, I don't think Jason's overestimating it. He's been kind of concerned about it.
I've been concerned about it. That's the thing that, like, again, I've been yelling at them to go look at Golden Tate, Dede Westbrook, anybody at this point. Again, get more people in here. You know, when we have reports, and nothing against him, Mohamed Sanu is like the leader in the clubhouse right now. Mohamed Sanu wasn't on many rosters last year. Like, he was at the end of the Lions roster. So yes, I mean, I'm not overvaluing it. I'm actually scared to death of like what could happen if Debo or Ayuk misses games. And I think I voiced that. And that's where Kendrick Bourne was so valuable. Kendrick Bourne was the guy who was the mainstay, and you can count on him every single week. They don't have a guy like that right now, at least not with a track record on this team.
No. Rod Simmons says, Grant, who is the new Pettis McFloppy candidate? River Craycraft, maybe. Who sticks out to you? Okay. This is a good transition into my turn. Number 4. Javon Kinlaw.
Okay.
Now Javon Kinlaw is going into his second year, so it's not like make or break. He's got a future. He's got a 4-year contract, but he needs to show improvement. He's a good athlete, a good run defender. But if you're just a run defender and you don't really do much against the pass, you're basically replaceable. You're basically expendable in 2021. And I'm not saying he isn't anything against the pass, but he needs to show it now, because I saw him last year in camp. You'll see him this year. When he went up against Laken Tomlinson, he made Laken Tomlinson look like Larry Allen. He just couldn't. There's nothing he could do. His initial move didn't work, and he had no counters. And that was every day. So I need to see him beat Laken Tomlinson. If he does, then this could be a situation where he could be Chris Jones. He could be one of these really disruptive defensive tackles who just was figuring it out his first year. If not, he could be more like maybe an Eric Armstead type who's really, really good against the run, but his pass rush is going to be more dependent on who's around him. I need to see something from Javon Kinlaw.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up because it's true. Like the things that I highlighted from last year about him were how great he was at shedding blocks and stopping the run, And then I went back because I'm a complete masochist and I was just bored and I watched the Eagles game again. And man, he had like one or two plays where he had Wentz in the grasp and he slipped out. If one or two of those go the other way, then he has sacks. So, the other thing is that the guy he's replacing, and I know that he's not replacing him and you can't just say one for one, but DeForest Buckner was so good at everything. And that's why he's an all-pro. And, that's why this defense, it can't approach the heights of 2019. It's almost impossible. DeForest Buckner is that good. He is that good.
He's just as good as Bosa, man. Having those two side by side was unfair. Yeah.
So, and it is interesting that you bring this up because Kinlaw, if he doesn't start to show that trajectory of where they took him, he could turn into a rotational guy. And that's not what you want when you're talking about how high they drafted him. So I expect that he's going to play well, though. I do.
I do too. He put out really good tape, and people are encouraged with him. But the original question was, who's the next McGlinchey? It's always the first round pick. And the reason that like Jimmy Ward is just starting to get his due is because he was a first round pick, and he missed games. He didn't have a position for years. It took a couple of years of him playing well at one spot for people to really get it. But if you're a first round pick, the bar is very high. People don't want to hear it. People want to see Pro Bowls. End of story. And that's where Kinlaw, forget that he's replacing Buckner. That's true. But he was still the 14th pick in the draft. You got to be really good, man. And that's going to be as a pass rusher. So that's what we got to see from him. Number 5, you're up.
Man. My guy, Jaquiski Tartt. And look, he came back on a 1-year deal. He bet on himself. I love that. And we all
love that too. He's making like $850K this year.
Right. And he it's never been about money with him. He wants to be here. We all know that when he's on the field, what he can do, and how he affects the game, how good he was. He was amazing in that Philly game. Fred Warner, who just got the bag. Everybody remembers the Fred Warner interception against the Giants, but it's actually Tartt that alerted Fred Warner to the call, and he's yelling it out. And you can hear Fred Warner talk about that in the press conference after the game. Tartt yelled it out. I recognized it too, and we just and we rolled with it. There's another play that I can reference in 2019, the Bengals game. Towards the end of the game, Keller Weatherspoon, who had already had a pick 6 in 2019 in the first game against the Bucs, which closed it out. Again, Tartt saw something on film. You can watch it if you go back and you look on Game Pass. He goes like this, and he claps his hands together, and he's telling him about the route. Spoon jumps it, just happens to drop it. If Spoon brings that in, that's back-to-back games with pick 6s, and who knows where his confidence goes from there. So Jaquiski Tartt is absolutely valuable. We all know that it just comes down to injuries, and it's not really make or break because I believe that no matter what, somebody's going to try to give him a shot wherever he goes. Hell of an athlete. But I think that if he's looking to cash in the way that he believes he is, because that was a smart move, bet on yourself, take the year, make sure that you play all your games, and then you can go to the negotiating table next year when the cap is in a better situation and things are clearer. But Tartt's got to put together a full season. It's year 7. Got to put together a full season at some point. And I think that that's what I mean in terms of make or break. The guy's a hell of a player. And I think he'll tell you himself that it's just been injuries. It's nothing more than that. But it is make or break for him, especially since he's betting on himself. So this is really an important camp for Jaquiski Tartt.
Right, because before this year, he was making $6-7 million a year. He's a really quality player who was being compensated as such. And what's going on is he's missed about 8 games a year for a while now. And it's a make or break year for him because if he does that again, the days of him making $6-7 million a year are probably over. He's approaching 30. He plays a high impact position. He might be in the Tony Jefferson camp of jumping around team to team, making $800,000, $900,000 a year, which is a life. And he may want to do that, but there is a lot of stake for him. He clearly has pride like Jimmy Ward does, and he's worthy of making the big bucks like Jimmy Ward does. He just needs to stay healthy. So the thing that was interesting to me is at OTAs, he still wasn't healthy. He was still rehabbing the turf toe injury that he had in like October, November last year. Now, I know there's no rush, but that's not good. So I'm not saying it's bad, but I noticed it. And if this is lingering into training camp, that's not good. I don't expect it will. In fact, they said it won't. But something to watch. He needs to play all of training camp. He's a veteran who needs to be out there.
Yeah, and he's just so smart with he can on He's a film junkie. When he was on my pod, we had him break down the interception he had against Cam Newton. And the way he started it was like, he's like, well, first of all, it's 21 personnel. They are not going to run the ball out of it. And what he does very well is he studies quarterbacks play action, right? And he said he knew right away the way that Cam started moving. First of all, he knew the personnel and that they were at the logo, he said. He was like, so they're not going to run it from there and not out of 21. So, but he noticed, he said, as soon as he turned his back, he goes, I knew it was play action. And he was playing single high. He got right back to his spot and he watched it and he made the interception happen. It's a lot that goes on to what he does and how smart he is and how he affects the game for other players. As I pointed out, the Fred Warner interception, which he even himself in the press conference was targeting it out. And he's a film junkie, man. The guy works, and Jimmy Ward was on your show, and he was talking about how Tart watches the film and how that kind of changed the way that he's also preparing as well too. So I thought that was really interesting to hear that from him.
Okay, my turn. I'm going to stay in the defensive backfield. Emmanuel Moseley, in the sense that he has a great opportunity to start. He's been starting the last couple of years, but they've never handed him a job. Keller Weatherspoon kind of gave him a job, and then Richard Sherman kind of gave him a job, and now it's his. But they also drafted Ambry Thomas, and if Ambry Thomas doesn't do so well, they'll probably draft someone next year. It's like he's a solid corner, but he's kind of fringe between high-level backup and low-level starter, and this is his opportunity to show that he is a quality starting corner in the NFL, and if the Niners don't want him long-term, some other team could. If not, he'll have a career of being a backup. And I don't know which way it's going to go. He doesn't know which way it's going to go. That's going to be determined soon.
Yeah, and I think he's a solid too, and there's nothing wrong with that as well too. But it's really those games. Sometimes when you look at them, they need a little bit of context, right? So when I was going through the quarterbacks from last year, we looking at their game logs. I think he was dinged in week 1 for like 145 yards. Well, okay, if you didn't watch the game. Right. But if you didn't watch the game, you would look at that and say, man, he was getting toasted. No, the game plan had them 10 yards off. There was a lot of miscommunications. He just happened to get dinged for them. Sure. Did he not play as well as he thought he should? I'm sure he'll probably tell you that as well. But it is important that he establishes himself as a starter in this league because that is valuable. And especially in at his age. And what? He was undrafted, right? An undrafted free agent.
So it's always a make or break off season when you're undrafted. You're always proving yourself.
Yeah, and that's it. And he in times shows being solid. I just don't think that he's the guy who can lock up a Hopkins or an Adams or one of those guys. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because not many people can do that. I'm not saying that that's a knock on him, but I think that if he establishes himself as a solid 2 where if Jason Verrett's over there locking down the other guy, he doesn't become a liability on the other side where teams just go ahead and pick on him, then I think that's valuable. And I think that he'll have a future on this team for a little while longer as well. It'll be hard to kick away a guy who plays 16 games and plays solidly on defense, especially at a position like cornerback. And it also gives you time to give Ambry Thomas time to figure it out and not throw him into the fire as well, because it's usually not a recipe for success unless they're a first round, like can't miss.
Yeah, the Niners have had a bunch of undrafted free agents that they've relied on the last few years, but have ultimately wanted to replace. Moseley fits in that category. Kendrick Bourne was in that category. Matt Breida, Rahim Moser. I mean, on and on and on. Ross Dwelly. And it's like these guys have to prove themselves 10 times, right? But Mosley's done it a lot. And he could, if he plays well this year, Ambry Thomas might have to wait until Jason Verrett leaves. And Emmanuel Moseley could be like a Tremaine Brock who has a long starting career after being an undrafted free agent. This is a wide range of outcomes for him. Very interesting. I always like the undrafted free agents that make it this far. It's a great story. I pull for them. Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, your turn. 7.
So let's go to the other cornerback, Jason Verrett.
Oh, okay.
And it's make or break in terms of how well he played last year, what we expect from him. It seems to be over the injury thing, but it's about proving what happened last year was the rule and not the exception to what he was doing. And, again, another guy, bet on himself, wanted to be here, spoke glowingly about the culture, about the training facilities and the rehab facilities. So it's really up to him. At this point, because I think that we all know how good he is in coverage. You saw it at the end of the year with Hopkins, locked him up after he had 143 yards in game 1, and then the near last game of the season, he had like 43 yards. It's a major difference. And again, corner can cover up so many other things that you are maybe lacking in pass rush. And I would love to see him put it together another year. And then next year, come back to the negotiating table and say, now pay me. Now pay me because I bet on myself. Again, another guy who bet on himself, coming off a great year and everything that he's been through, rooting for him. But he does have to prove that those injuries are a thing of the past. And he is vital to this team's success in 2021 because, again, we talked about it. It gets hairy after him and Mosley. So I am rooting for him. But this is another training camp that he basically just has to get through healthy and just make sure that he stays healthy throughout the season.
Oh, there's so much at stake for him. I mean, if he stays healthy and plays like he did last year, he's going to end up getting a ton of money in like 7-8 months. It's going to be way richer than he is right now. On the other hand, if he gets hurt this year and misses 7-8 games, then he's back in the Jaquiski Tartt boat. Which is
that flyer that teams take a chance on, like a flyer, like, hey, if we can get him going, this is what we can get, but you're not betting on it, right? Like when they brought Jason Verrett in, they brought him in trying to unlock what they saw when he was in San Diego, but he wasn't counted on. It was almost like an ace in the hole, like, like, hey, if we get something out of this, cool, but he would probably go back to something like that unless the team values him and says, hey, we can get him over all this injury stuff. But yeah, he has to stay healthy. That's it.
Yeah, like here's the vet minimum. Let's see what you got. Now he got that back when he was like 27. Now, if he gets hurt this year, he'll be 30. I think he probably is 30 already. So even if he does stay healthy, teams will use that 30 against him because for DBs, 30 is like 80. Teams are like, ew. But in Verrett's case, he missed so much time. He really hasn't done as much running and hasn't had as much collisions. I mean, he's got fresh legs, kind of like Rahim Moser. So this guy really does have the ability. Moser too. Although I don't know if he'll be able to prove it in training camp as much. Moser has to stay healthy for the long haul. He could fit into this category as well. But Moser and Verrett, they're kind of on this. They're kind of similar versions of each other, offense, defense. High end players who need to stay healthy. Yeah,
I was going to use him if you didn't, Moser. So I guess if you want to use that as the next one or one of the other ones, it's up to you because I think that is a worthy discussion at this point.
Let's do Moser. Yeah. Okay. Rahim Moser, he's in a contract year. He's almost 30. He's a legendary playoff performer. He really does average 5 yards a carry for his career. I mean, the primary job of a running back is to run the ball, and he's excellent at it. It's just that he's getting old and he's gotten hurt a lot and he's running out of time. If he misses time this year for any reason, he's not going to get the contract next year, and he may not even get many more opportunities to carry the ball. The Niners could replace him. But if he fulfills all the promise that he showed 2 years ago, he could get this. He could benefit from the same logic that Verrett would benefit from: fresh legs. He's still he's younger than his age. He could get a ton of money from maybe not the Niners, but some other team, the Rams. Who knows?
Yeah, and the thing is that everybody talks about the injuries with Rahim Moser, and a lot of people try to throw the Shanahan system at him as a negative. I think that he kind of elevates that system. If you let me make my point real quick. So it's really, I think that he gets slept on with his vision. He's so good at seeing the hole, and then the speed hitting it is what is like separating him. So even if you go back to last year, he's the only running back to have a 60-yard touchdown reception or larger than 60 yard. Okay, did that like on like the first drive. You fast forward to the Jets game, first play to the crib. He even had a touchdown call back, a longer one. Like
that is true.
This is how good he is when he's on the field. Like this is legit how good he is. But get.
Oh, I was going to add to that. I mean, it's the vision and then the decisiveness. It's like we talk about those things with quarterbacks, and we complain about them with Jimmy Garoppolo. He doesn't see it. He doesn't pull the trigger. He hesitates. Rahim Moser doesn't do that as a running back. And Tevin Coleman did. I felt on the 49. He didn't always see it quickly. He didn't always hit it when he should. And I asked Kyle Juszczyk, like, Kyle, what is it about Rahim Moser that makes him good? He's like, he's decisive. He doesn't second guess himself. He hits it and he sees it correctly. So those two things together make him he's not flashy, although it's flashy when he's 40, 50 yards down the field, but he's just really effective.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So if he's able to put together a season where he plays 13, 14, 15 games this year, maybe he'll find a contract somewhere else. Like you said, who knows if Cam Akers can bounce back from an Achilles injury? There's not really many running backs that you could point to that have come back from that. And you know, I'm wishing him all the best. But there will be available spots for him to go to and for him to contribute. He has to shake the injury stigma. And then it's up to other people whether they believe that he's a product of the system or if he elevates the system. I'm actually in the camp of him elevating Shanahan's system because those gaps are there for anybody. But an outside zone, when he sees that gap, it's a larger gain than it is for anybody else. And then the last point is the 49ers have brought in Trey Sermon, Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson's still on this roster, Wayne Gallman's there. So they're going to continue to stockpile running backs. And if he unfortunately can't put together a full season, then there's going to be a tough decision for them to make. And then that'll affect him going forward in this league. So yes, he has to put it together. And you're right, the 30-year-old so if 30 is 80 for a cornerback, 30 is 130 for running backs, and that's how they're viewed, right? Unless you're Adrian Peterson, who's just continued to get a job everywhere he goes. But that's how he's going to be viewed across the league. And I would hate to see that because you're right, his career did start later, so he may have way more in the tank. It's not like he's been playing since he was 23 and has played 7 years and gotten to 30. He's really only had 3-4 years of actual football. So it's a good point, but yes, he does have to put it together, and he has to show that he can stay on the field because when he's on there, it's very clear at how effective he is and what he brings to this team.
I mean, the Niners are ready to move on. They drafted 2 running backs this year, and he's a free agent next year. It's like, well, one of them will be ready to take your job. We don't know who it's going to be. So, yeah, they're ready to move on. But the thing is, he's not a bell cow, and that's why he wasn't drafted. But most teams use committees now anyway, and I feel like there's such a premium on speed now, almost more than ever, and he's the fastest running back in the league. There are a lot of teams that could find a way to use him in a limited basis, like Kansas City. Yeah, I always say, imagine him on Kansas City. But seriously, I mean, imagine him on Kansas City in the same offense as Tyreek Hill. Be unfair. So
yeah, and speed is where the game's going. That's why everybody's drafting linebackers who used to be safeties. It's not a fitting game. Like there was somebody on Twitter yesterday that was saying like, oh, that was a terrible thing to bring in Fred Warner, and I'm just like, what on God's earth are you talking about, right? Like, he's a former safety, and what he offers in coverage, you know, he's like, oh, well, if you need him to cover threes, that's easy to find. Yeah,
the number 3 receiver in a 3x1 set, the most inside guy.
But what if the inside guy is Julio Jones? What if the inside guy is Marquise Brown? What if the inside guy is like Cooper Kupp? Those aren't like tight ends. So he's able to do that. So that's
Josh Hermsmeyer is very smart, and I was trying to follow along with what he was going with. I just disagree with him, man. First of all, he was saying that like coverage is unpredictable based on like PFF grades. First of all, forget PFF grades. I think you can watch coverage. If you watch the film, you can really see who's good in coverage and who isn't. I really believe that coverage is just as important as pass rush. And he was saying like, well, it is, but only as like a unit, not individual. I disagree. I think what Fred Warner can do in terms of coverage is unique, and you can see it. It's consistent. The other point he said is that linebackers get hurt. That's a good point. Warner doesn't, though. Warner's not. He doesn't lead with his head. He's got good tackling technique. You don't really have to worry about stingers and separated shoulders with him. I don't know, man. It seems like this was a good signing to me.
Of course it was. It's all instincts. It's all what he brings. You know, I can point to the Patriots game, right? The interception that he had. He forced Cam out of the read because he's in front of Julian Edelman, and then he tried to like fit it again, and Fred's right there for the interception. Yeah. That's not something that like he's like, oh, just draft another Fred Warner in the 3rd round. Oh, cool, Fred Warner's. I found a Fred Warner in my couch while with my change and everything. No, that's not.
He's saying that like middle linebacker is in a premium position.
I understand that argument,
but this guy, what he does in coverage and the total package makes him a premium player.
So, but I understand that argument.
Yeah.
Middle linebackers worth that, but he's not most middle linebackers. It's not like that's my problem with the analytics thing. It's so rigid. There's no black. It's all black and white. There's no color in between.
And their attitude is like, okay, well, if we live by this code, we'll get it wrong sometimes, but we'll be right more than we'll get it.
We'll get it right more than we're not. But
and they may be right in that, but in this case, they're wrong. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fred's different. Fred's different.
Yeah, yep. Fred's different. Okay, your last one.
I'm probably stealing your last one.
I got multiples. Oh, Michael
Lindsay.
Okay.
It's time.
Yeah.
It's time, man. 5th option. This is it. Now the jury's really gonna be out on whether this was the right pick. If you can take that next step that everybody thinks you can, that we hope you can in pass protection, then fifth-year option being picked up is fine, and you're going to get yourself another contract to stay here because you don't let number 9 overall picks walk. Start to have a little bit of a season where you start to blow those big sacks in the big moments, and the noise starts to get a little bit louder around you about whether you should be brought back. Maybe they have somebody on this team that they think they can convert to his spot, or maybe they have to address the position again in the draft. So many things hinge on Mike McGlinchey's success and his progression, because if you do let him walk, then it seems like whatever pick you're going to have, you might be shoehorned into trying to take a tackle. That's the thing. Again, we talked about it. When you miss on those high picks, the next year's draft or later on down the line, you're trying to backtrack to fix that. And that's the thing. So we all know that he's a lead in run blocking. Never been a question about that. He has to take that next step in quarterback, in protecting the quarterback, because fifth-year option, this is your chance to get paid again. You're still a young guy. You're still a guy that a lot of people look to with a lot of potential in that regard, but you have to show it. It has to happen this year. It has to happen in this training camp.
Yeah, and it seems like this is the one guy the Niners aren't really hedging. Like, there's no replacement on the roster. You know, there's Trey Lance, there's Ambry Thomas, there's Trey Sermon. There's a lot of hedging. There's a lot of insurance policies, but nothing at right tackle. Their attitude is, we believe in Mike. We drafted him with the 9th pick. It was the right pick. He had a bad year last year. He owned it. He's going to make the right fixes and be good next year. To which I say, great. And I think maybe there's some indications that that's what's going to happen. He is bigger. First of all, he's saying the right things. He's not saying like, I'm being unfairly criticized and I was actually good last year. He was like, no, I sucked. I was too light. I need to get stronger. Good. Also, he looks bigger. And just like Fred Warner, Mike McGlinchey was out there for every rep of OTAs before it got canceled. Good for him. He gets credit for that. And he needs to do that in training camp. Like, he needs to be out there playing well every day, basically starting from the ground up. And if he does that, then he could be a guy. He could be the next guy who gets the big Fred Warner extension on this team.
Right. And he has a chance to do that. Like Fred didn't even have to play 5 years for them to give it, and that's the thing. So they picked up the 5th-year option. Yeah, 3, but again, there is no 5th-year option like when it comes to a 3rd round pick. But again, man, it's been 5 years. You've got to show it now. This is it. This is your shot.
Good call. I wasn't going to go with Mike McGlinchey because I'm trying to be nicer, but let's be honest. I mean, he would have to even agree. Like, there's a lot at stake for Mike McGlinchey right now.
I'm not bashing him at all. I don't bash players. I'm just trying to be objective. That's it, man. And if you just got your 5th-year option picked up, that means next year you're going to be a free agent. So don't you want to hit that free agent market with a lot of value and say, hey, I'm my best self right now. And that's what he should be going for. I'm sure he is.
Devin says, Grant, why are the Niners set on unproven injury-prone wideouts, injury-prone running backs? Kyle Magic will run out eventually, right? It's interesting. The defense is much more established and set than the offense. The offense has youth and question marks all over it. I mean, even the offensive line has a lot of question marks. It's interesting because it's an offensive coach. You'd think it'd be an offensive team, but the offense is still trying to catch up to where the defense has been for the last couple of years. Yeah,
and I think that a lot of it is Kyle being able to scheme things up, and he's shown, Rahim Moser, remember, Kyle didn't bring Rahim Moser in, Chip Kelly did. So he saw him on the roster and kept him, and then he got what he got out of him.
Had him in Philly.
Right, exactly. Yep. So that's another thing. I think that it is system, right? Because Rahim Moser was just a special teams guy, and he saw something, he unlocked that. Jeff Wilson, on and off the roster, many times. Nobody picked him up. Look, right, Jeff Wilson balled out. I think that it is a little bit of Kyle saying, you know what, we can not, I don't want to say bargain bin die because that seems like harsh, but I can. But
that's what he's saying. Yeah.
They value the position, but they don't really want to invest too much aside from Trey Sermon and Derek McKinnon and those picks and stuff like that. They value the position, but I think that he's had too much success with, like, look what he did with Alfred Morris. Like, he did so well with Alfred Morris in Washington. I understand that has to do with a lot of the read option that him and RG3 were running, but he thought so much of him that he brought him back. Alfred Morris was fine when he was over here, in 2018. So I think that it is a little bit of that. It's like, hey, trust the system. Kyle is the system, and you just need guys who can execute it. And I think that's the way that they're looking at it.
Definitely. Okay, real quick. Sean says, Ayuk, Debo are the only wideouts that fit the system. You could say Hurd, but he's never healthy. Everyone is a question mark. Need to pick up Tate.
I've been saying that. I mean, D.D. Westbrook wouldn't be bad either. You know, it's so much is hinging on Jalen Hurts. And I hate to keep talking about him on here, and I hate to keep saying that, but third round pick, third year. And then, you know, I hate to keep bringing this back up. You could have drafted Terry McLaurin.
Right.
Gosh, you know, and that changes the way that you change your drafts down the line. But I think they really believe in him. That's why they didn't address it with a draft pick, and that's why
they haven't signed D.D. Westbrook, even though they've worked him out. So if Jalen Hurts doesn't work out, you're going to see the Niners make a move. It could be Westbrook, but I think the fact that they haven't made a move shows you that it's all about Hurts. They really want this to work.
They should. They should. You know, and again, positionless football. He fits all that. We've talked about it a million times. Yeah, you know, and I have we even mentioned him? Is he number 10?
Well, look. Let's do some honorary mentions because I have someone, but you could say Hurd. You could say, I mean, big time make or break year for Hurd. Big time make or break year for Marcel Harris, considering Talanoa Hufanga is his replacement. That's a free agent next year. Also, Mohamed Sanu. That's a vet with an opportunity to have a big role or get cut again and be pretty much done. But I'm going to go with someone more important, someone younger, Deebo Samuel. I mean, last year was so tough for him, and he's such a good player. Like, there's no question. I love watching Deebo Samuel play. He's a hell of a player. But his injury stuff is troubling. It goes back far. It's bones, it's soft tissue stuff. It's the style of play. It's his conditioning. It's all of it. If he does this 2 years in a row where he can't stay healthy, then he's going to lose a lot of money. His second contract isn't going to be what he wants it to be. The Niners could make a big investment at wide receiver. They may not look at him as a future starting wide receiver for them. They may look at him as a gadget player, someone who can only play some of the snaps. Or if he stays healthy like he did as a rookie and shows that last year was kind of just an aberration from a young guy who was figuring out how to take care of his body, that guy could make a ton of money in the NFL. He could be making $15 million a year because he is that really good. So I think there's a lot of stake for Deebo right here too. He needs to show that he's got like the professional side of the job down, just getting his body ready because he can really play.
Yeah, it's so funny how many of these guys that we're just talking about health. We're not talking about your skills. We're not talking about anything like that. You know, it's really just health. And this is so the reason I don't think it's a make or break year is because, you know, think about the investment, right? And if he does go through another injury, you know, then they have one more year before they have to decide on his 5th year option. So, I mean, but I get exactly what you mean. Like he has to put it together.
Yeah.
He has to
just
put
in terms
together,
of like his financial outlook and how invested the Niners will remain in him moving forward. Because if he has 2 back-to-back injury-prone seasons, now you're thinking like, man, do we need to spend a high pick on a wide receiver? Or do we need to start planning for life without Deebo?
And the fans have seen glimpses of this offense full, healthy, right? It's only like 1 or 2 games, right? So the fans have another thing to do with this, right? Because we all love the idea of it being Deebo on one side, Ayuk on the other, Kittle, Mostert, this entire this offensive, whoever is Jimmy or Trey. We haven't been able to see that. It's either one of them is banged up, 2 of them are banged up, somebody on the line's messed up, the quarterback's banged up. It's really make or break for almost all these people that we talked about. So with Deebo, it's really about, can you put it together? Can we actually see what this offense looks like under Kyle's watch when everything's rolling, when all these guys are healthy? Because I think that is as formidable as any offense in the league, especially when you consider what Kyle can do for scheming people open. But it is Deebo becomes what they believe because they had this role pegged out for him. Like this is what they wanted for him, and they targeted him. And, you know, we're not going to talk about who they passed on, but they understood what they wanted to do with him, and they understood his skill set, and that's why he gets the ball in the way he does. I also think that he could take another leap in route running. All he has to do is just be on the field. That's it. I think that he's a better route runner than he's given credit for, considering what was charted on him last year, especially he only played 5 games. But I think that he can do much more, and he has to show it this training camp. Just get through training camp. That's it. No dinged up, nothing. No tight hammy, nothing like that. I don't know how to stop that, so I'm not here to judge on that. Like, I don't know how you combat that, but you have to find a way because ultimately it's up to you.
I mean, when Deebo Samuel's at his best, there are times he looks like the best player in the offense. The best player. Better than Kittle. I mean, better than Mostert, Ayuk. What he can do after the catches, I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen
With the
anything
ball in
like
his
that.
hands on those sweeps, like again, seeing the holes, having the vision, runs hard, knows exactly where he wants to go with. I get exactly what they want to do. I just
You know
think
how
that
Kyle says he likes to set the tone early in the game with like a thumper running back between the tackles? He does it with Debo. That's the guy who sets the tone, and he does it down the field. He does it by turning a 10-yard gain into a 20-yard gain and then flexing on the entire sideline. I really like Debo Samuel. It's just he's got to prove that this style of play is sustainable because it's the most violent style of play I've ever seen from a wide receiver. It's glorious.
And I know that those are big plays, and I love watching them as well too. But I think that if you ask Kyle, I would think that he'll tell you, I want to stop using him in that way with all those just like he doesn't maybe once or twice a game. But you don't want to see him 3, 4, 5 times running that the same way because then you start to get nervous about that. So I think that Kyle, whether you want to blame it on whatever quarterback play, fine. I think that he kind of wants to get away from that a little bit more and try to get him open on slants where the ball comes out quickly. He catches it. Now he's got the ball in his hands with a head full of steam, and now he can make a move as opposed to just throwing it to him behind the line, hoping that the blocking continues, and then him making a move off of it and just running hard. So I'm really interested to see when he's fully healthy, when he's right, when he's running routes in the way that I think he can, how they're going to use him and how much more they're going to use him with those jet sweeps.
Yeah, because again, Debo, if you're listening, you've been labeled as a gadget player, and now you're being labeled as now you've been labeled as a gadget player, not by Jason, but that's the label, gadget player, and now it's like injury-prone gadget player. Like, are you a number 3 who needs to play half the snap? So you have the opportunity to show people that you are not a gadget player. You're a starting wide receiver and a number 1 wide receiver who can beat you short, intermediate, and deep. And I think he can do it too. I think really those limitations are more Jimmy's limitations than Debo's. And I think we're going to see that this year, next year, whenever Trey Lance becomes a quarterback and plays the way we expect him to. So that's exciting.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is this is why he's so vital is just even having him run across the formation. He doesn't even have to be the guy getting the ball because he demands that much attention. Just manipulating the eyes of the linebackers watching him is enough that if you watch him for 1 second and that ball goes to Rahim Moser, he's gonna run past the other way. And that's just the facts. And that's why they do it. That's why they implement so much motion with him because you know how dangerous he is with the ball. And you know that if it's Trey and that ball's in the belly of Mostert with Samuel coming across, now you're attacking all 4 principles. You're attacking everywhere. You're attacking with Debo, with Mostert, or with Trey pulling it out, and passing it. So that's the type of pressure that Debo puts on linebackers when he's healthy.
The only other player in the NFL who causes as much or more anxiety among defensive players when just going in motion is Tyreek Hill. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And they're different, but they're both very, very dangerous. And just putting them in motion before the play can create, lanes for other people, misdirection, anything you need. Yep. Absolutely.
That's the thing. Like a linebacker will move right out of a spot because he's following Debo Samuel. All he has to do is move 2 steps to the left, and now you've opened up a gap the other way behind them. And it's all it's all part of the magic act. All the window dressing, all that. It's all part of the Kyle magic act when he's in his bag on offense.
Okay, so I think what Jason and I have been taking 52 minutes to say is that we're really freaking excited for training camp, which starts in 5 days. The first practice is in 7 days. We are spending every day previewing it, thinking about what we're excited to watch. We're prepared. Can't wait for this to happen. Next time we talk, it'll just be Coast, Niners Coast, single Coast. I'm looking forward to it. Single Coast. Next time I see you out here, man. Can't wait.
Yeah, man. Grab a beer, maybe have some dinner. Amazing.
Absolutely. Can't wait, man. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Fred Warner has his press conference in an hour and a half. Check it out. I'll be there.